Okay. Hi guys. Welcome to episode 2 of Godly Chisme. Um, whoa. This one's a big one because oh, I've never fully told my testimony. And God has been like, I need you to tell your testimony. And I've said it in parts, but it's never been the whole thing. And I've shut my mouth to save people who don't, I'm not going to say they don't deserve it because they're God's children too and they made mistakes, but I've shut my mouth to save people instead of opening it for the one who saved me. And this is huge when you really tell your testimony the way God wants you to say it, because I have been attacked all day, all day. And I even was like, I'm gonna come home and I'm gonna get ready and, put a little makeup on so when I make the video I look a little cute or whatever. But it's not about me. It's about him who saved me, right? Um, so yeah, I'm gonna let Holy Spirit lead and whew, I didn't think it was gonna be this hard for me. Um, so I was born via C-section, and um, it was crazy because uh, my mom told me that she didn't know it was a prophetic dream, but her first prophetic dream was when she was pregnant of me. And I just recently found this out, but I was born November 9th of 94 in Modesto, California. Um, and I almost did not make it. I I guess my heart dropped or something like that, and they had to have an emergency C-section, which was a prophetic dream that my mom had, that she was going to have me via C-section. And I had I guess in my mind, a normal, decent childhood up until the age of 3, but it was not normal. My mom was going through it with my dad. My dad was raging alcoholic. Um, he was so deep in alcohol that he would wake up in the middle of the night having to have a drink and go back to sleep because he was not able to function without having alcohol. Um, my mom tried to get him help and whatnot, but it didn't work out, right? So my life changed when um, I guess my dad threatened my mom to kidnap us because she had left him. So she uprooted us and took us to Houston, Texas. Um, there, my mom was fending for herself with 2 kids. She didn't know anybody except my sister's dad that was out there. Um, and, we would go to the babysitters and she would go to work. She would work full time, and, it kind of got exhausting for her. But while I was there, um, I have some memories, not a lot. I remember we would be in this apartments, and we were just playing these inappropriate games that we were not supposed to be playing at a young age. I was like 5 years old, playing spin the bottle, 7 minutes in heaven, and all that crazy stuff. Um, but in my mind, my childhood was still normal, right? Um, we came back to California. We lived with my grandma and then my aunt and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I was about 9 years old when anger really like creeped up in my heart. Um, I remember my mom, she got with her ex-husband, um, and everything was fine until I guess that his mom came down, and it just came and became to this whole like he was a mama's boy type thing. And he just turned into this whole different person. And from mm, that's hard. But I'm gonna say there was a lot of abuse in the home: physical, mental, verbal, emotional, everything you can think of. I've seen plates thrown, VCR thrown, smashed on people's head. I've seen it all, right? And um, it was pretty bad. I remember kind of getting in between it. I remember like growing up, when we would get in trouble, we would get like whooped really bad. And I remember getting to the point where I just felt really bad. Like I was just like, you know what? I'm tired of getting hit. I'm tired of getting beat. And like something took over me, and I would laugh. Like I would just laugh at my mom in her face. I would laugh at my stepdad in his face when they would hit me. Like it was funny to me. And it got to the point where it didn't even hurt. Like I wouldn't cry. Like it was just so funny to me, and I would laugh and I would laugh and I would laugh. And my mom would be like, we're gonna see who gets tired, you of laughing or me of spanking you. And I would just laugh and laugh. And you know, I like there was just like this I don't know, rebellion that came over me because of everything that was going on in the house. My mom, they would get in a fight, and she would make me and my sister pack our things up, and we would put them in the truck, and we would know, like it got to the point where we would know we're not going to go anywhere. So we would literally put like one or two shirts in a backpack. We got to that point where we're like, I'm tired of putting this stuff away. Like I'm tired of, we're not gonna go anywhere. We already know. We're just gonna let them fight it out. We're gonna let them beat each other, and then we're gonna be fine. Um, and during that time, as a 9-year-old girl, you just don't know what to do, and you're going to school, and that's not even a safe place at that time. I was getting bullied. I know people will probably be like, you ain't never got bullied, because if you know my past self, but they'd be like, I got bullied. I remember this girl, she was like trying to stab me, and I was like in the fourth grade at that time. She literally brought a knife to stab me, and I was like, okay, well, let's fight. And we ended up not fighting that time, but that kind of stirred up like this like courage. Like I was about to get stabbed. So if I was about to get stabbed and I got this courage, then you know what, from today forward, I'm done. Nobody's gonna talk to me crazy. Nobody's gonna, you know just like bully me. Nobody's gonna do nothing to me from today forward, right? And like I said, I was going through it at home. My mom and her husband, they were going back and forth and abusing each other in front of us, and nothing was changing. And it went finally till this girl, she had moved into the apartments complex that we lived in. And at that time too, we were living in Tracy, and we lived in an apartment complex. We were playing spin the bottle, 7 minutes in heaven, like all these stupid things that children should not be doing, like filling up on each other, just doing all these things, right, that we should not be doing. But because one, none of us, all of us, all these kids were broken. We don't know that at the time, but all these kids are broken. We're trying to find love in the wrong places, and you know things are going on in each and every one of our households. And this girl, she started talking about my mom, and she was speaking in Spanish. And a lot of people say I look white, so she didn't think that I knew Spanish for some reason, but I knew everything she was saying. And eventually she got to the point, because I was just I guess I was just like the anger in me, the spirit of anger in me was just like stirring up, right? Like it was just getting ready to boil over, I guess, right? Um, and I remember she said something about my mom, and that just took me over the roof, because no matter what has ever happened in my life, I've always had this respect for my mom. It's just been like, I don't know, something in me, right? Just knew that I had to have this respect for my mother. And um, so the neighbor's parents knew that I wanted to fight this girl. And they took me to the park and her to the park. And like I said, I was about 9 years old at this time. And they took us to the park so we can fight. So these parents, they knew we were going to fight. So they were looking at these 9-year olds, 10-year olds ready to fight. And they were antagonizing it, right? They were taking us to the park to fight. And I didn't know what to do at the time. Like, I've never been in a fight before. I knew that this other girl wanted to stab me, but I've never actually been in a fight until this moment. And so I remember we went to the park. It was actually an elementary school across the street from the apartments that we lived in. And they were just like, fight. And the moment they said fight, I just didn't even know where I was, who I was, what I seen, what I didn't see. I didn't know anything anymore. It was just completely red. I took off on this girl, and I remember getting on top of her, and I grabbed her and I started smashing it on the concrete. And well, I've never got sad telling this story. This is crazy. So God changes people. Um, so yeah, I remember just smashing her head on this concrete, and she was like, "Oh, stop, stop, stop! I have a tumor. I have a tumor." And so I stopped. Like, something in me stopped. Like, it must have been the Holy Spirit in me, because I had compassion for her, right? So I stopped, and I remember, like, from that moment forward, I was forever changed. I had been in fight after fight after fight after fight after fight. I wouldn't say I was looking for it, but I was ready to do it. Like anybody, like I was almost looking for somebody to come at me sideways, to um, get me angry, to like just disrespect me, right? And the minute that they did, it's almost like I had this power over them, right? And I'd be like, I would go up to them, and they knew, like, people would warn them. It was like people would warn them and be like, don't mess with her. She might be small, she might be tiny, but don't mess with her. Like, leave her alone, don't mess with her. And it was almost like this, like, I loved that power of like being like, I know you're talking about me, I know you're disrespecting me, but this is the one and only chance that I'm gonna let you do this to me, right? So like, I'd like instilling that fear in them, and giving them that warning before I took off on them. And the next time they did it, it'd be all bad, right? Like, I would just take off on them. There was no other chance. And at this time, this is throughout all high school, at this time, like, I had a name, I had an identity, right? I was known, right, for that stupid thing. But in the middle of this, I was 13 years old um, when I met my ex-husband. And I was 13 years old. Everybody was having sex at the time except me. And I was like, when I have sex, like, that's the person that I'm gonna be with forever and ever. And so I don't know how y'all just out here doing it with everybody. So When I met him, um, I didn't like him. I didn't like his demeanor. I didn't like how he acted. He was very disrespectful. But there was something in me that because everybody else liked him, I was going to be with him. Because I was going to be the one to show everybody else that I could take whatever I wanted, whoever I wanted. It didn't matter, right? So at that time, he was like my first real boyfriend. So before that, I was like talking to people, like, which is stupid because it was before I was even 13 years old. So I was talking to people, making out with people, all these stupid things. Um, but this was like my first real boyfriend, right? And um, so yeah, he was like, well, I want to be with you and all this stuff. And I was like, no. And eventually it happened. I was 13 years old when I fell into sexual sin. And from that moment on, I was like, love was sex to me, right? Um, I had been with him up until the age of 21. And that's the only thing we really had in common, to be honest, besides the fact that we were both broken. He didn't have, um, his family didn't really want him. He was going, you know, back and forth from his mom's to his dad's. And then me, I ain't had no daddy. I was wild, fighting everybody, going home. I hated being home. I didn't want to go home. So I felt comfort in him and he felt comfort in me. And now we're two broken people trying to have comfort within each other, which is not the way to do things, right? Um, so yeah, and it was toxic from the beginning. Let me tell you, like, he would break up with me every weekend. I would break up with him as soon as I had another crush, and then we would talk to other people, and then we'd get back together because it was like it was our comfort. Like, to be together was our comfort. And it, to me, it was like I could talk to somebody else and I can have a crush on them until it was to the point where they wanted to have sex, and I was like, no, I can't have sex with you. Like, I've already been with one person. So then I go back to what was hurting me emotionally, um and not physically at that time. He was not hurting me physically at that time. But then one day, I remember we were on the phone fighting. And um, during this time, I'm having feet swells, and my feet kept getting swollen. Um, my my mom kept taking me to the hospital, um, and they didn't know what was wrong with me. They kept saying that something was biting me and this and that. I had this rash on my body, and my mom was like, "Wait, she has this rash. You keep saying something's biting her and stuff like that." Um, so um, my mom kept taking me in and out of the hospital, and we're trying to figure out what's wrong with me. And so while I'm dating this guy, um, I remember we were in this big old fight, and I was just crying. And then I come down. I felt something in my eye, like in the corner of my eye, and I come down, and I tell my mom, I was like, I feel something in my corner of my eye, like this little ball. And she was like, oh, you were probably on the phone with your little boyfriend, and he's over there making you cry. You're fine. And I was like, I don't know. I've never felt this before. And she was like, no, you're fine. And I go to sleep that night, and I wake up like at 3 in the morning, and my whole eye is shut. Like, literally, my whole eye is shut, and it's going towards my other eye. And my mom takes me to the ER, and they're like, oh, something bit her. And if you know my mom, she's a fighter, right? um, that's where I get it from. She's a fighter. She will fight for those people she loves, just like I've always been, right? And she was like, I've been coming in here with her for her foot and her foot and her foot, and now it's her face. And she's like, it's it's not a bite. Show me the bite. Like, she's fighting the doctor, and my mom's missing work, trying to figure out, you know, how to feed us, how to take care of us. She's missing work because of me. Trying to figure out what's wrong with me. And they ended up taking me to a doctor in the morning after the ER because they couldn't figure out what's wrong with me. And by that time, my other eye shut and it's going down towards my mouth. So my whole face, like, is just completely swollen. And from that doctor, they rushed me to the Oakland's Children, and they try to stabilize it. And once they stabilized it, um, they sent me to UCSF, and I was there for a long time. I think like 2 weeks or something like that. They were just doing tests, and they gave me frozen plasma, and like my mom's stressed out because she's missing work. And so now I'm like angry at God because I'm like, I'm going through this and this and this and that. And now on top of that, now I'm sick. And I don't know if I'm gonna die at this point. I don't know what's going on. I just like, they almost had to intubate me. And I'm like, why? Like, why do I keep going through all this, you know? And my mom, she was Catholic, and she'd be like, we gotta pray. And I was like, bruh, like, God don't want nothing to do with me. If God was real, this stuff wouldn't be happening to me. Like, I'm a good person. Even though I was hurting people, and my excuse was I was hurting them because they were doing something to me. So in my mind, I was a good person. And so I was like, why, Lord? Like, why? Like, why are you allowing me to go through this? Like, I've been through enough, you know? And so they find out I had hereditary angioedema. And I'm going by my life as much as possible, in and out of the hospital. My mom had to miss work. So at that point, like I said, like, I was having these thoughts of why me. I was trying to focus on, makeup at the time. That's when I really got into makeup. And um, instead of hearing positive things, I would get critiques from my family, like, oh, why you do your makeup like that? Like, that's too much. Da, 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 da. I'm in high school at that time, um, but then when they wanted something, they would be like, oh, can you do my makeup? Can you do this? Right? So they're talking down on me, but then asking me for a favor in return. So my whole life, um, it's just been like that. I'm talked down on. Why are you like this? Why are you like that? Why are you like this? Why are you so rude? Why are you so this? Why are you so that? I'm like, I was an angry child. Like, what do you mean? I'm going through this. I can't talk about it. When I do, like, it was like, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. So like I said, during this whole time, I'm still with my boyfriend, um, on and off, on and off. Um, but then my mom's husband got deported. When he got deported, she was going back and forth to the jails, to Mexico, leaving us here. My sister at that time was out of the house already. And when my mom was leaving to Mexico, my boyfriend was living with my sister in this, I guess it's basically like a trap house. They were all doing drugs and alcohol, and I was staying there, and I was like being exposed to these things, but I never did them. I smoked weed once in a while, but I never did them. I was never interested. Um, and when my mom finally came back, even though I was basically living with my boyfriend already, she was like, no, you're underage, you gotta live with me. And I was like, well, I'm almost 17. I graduated high school. I had to go to a continuation high school because even though I was how can I say this, even though I was smart and I could pass every single test, I wasn't there because I was suspended basically more than 50% of the year because I was always fighting. And so I had to go to a continuation high school, and I decided I'm going to finish early and I'm going to pursue this dream of going to beauty school. And so my mom, when she came back from Mexico, I was 16 years old. I had graduated high school, and I wanted to go to beauty school, so she helped me sign up for beauty school. And then I was like, well, I want my boyfriend to live with us. And then she's like, well, you have to get married in order for him to live with you. And I was like, well, basically, I'm emancipated because I graduated high school and I'm going to college. So she was like, just get married. And so I did. That's like 4 days after my 17th birthday, I got married. Um, After that, I was going to college. I was working and going to college. I had been working since a very young age. So I was still working. I was going to beauty school, and I was married, and then I got pregnant. Once I got pregnant, we moved out on our own, with my sister and her husband at the time, and they had a newborn. So my nephew and my daughter are 9 months apart. That's when kind of things started getting weird, like between me and him. Um, he was more um, mentally and physically abusive. He was like, "Oh, you're fat. You're this. You're that. Nobody's gonna. Why are you getting ready? Nobody's gonna want you." Like his insecurities, he would feed into me. Uh, but when I had my daughter, that's when things got physical. So we had to move from the apartment that we lived at. Like I said, we moved out on our own. We had to move from that apartment because he had lost his job and we couldn't afford it. And we ended up living with his mom's house. And from there, we went to a little small studio. Um, when we lived in that studio, I don't even remember. I don't know if it's just my mind hiding it from me, or I don't know. But I don't remember the first time he hit me. I just remember like other times, you know. And there was times where my daughter was on the bed and he would just choke me out because I was on my phone, and he was insecure that I was on the phone. He would break my phone, throw it, um, and I would fight back because I thought I was Miss Tough Girl at that time, my whole life basically. Um, and I would fight back, and we would go at it. And you know, there's things I've thrown, there's things I've swung, there's things, you know, and I was like having deja vu through all of this, I guess. I wouldn't say deja vu. I rebuked that. I I was having flashbacks to what I would go through when I was little, and I was like, I'm not gonna allow my child. I said I would never allow my child to go through this. I would never allow my child to go through this, and it just kept getting worse, and it kept getting worse, and each time it would get worse, I would end up in the hospital because stress caused my angioedema to swell up. And then when I'd be in the hospital, he'd be like, I don't know why we have to be here. You're lucky I'm even here. You're lucky. You're lucky I love you, that I'm willing to bring you to the hospital all the way to San Francisco, and like all this stuff. And like it was just horrible, horrible. And I remember one day he came at me. My daughter was on the bed again, and she was asleep, and he tried to choke me out, and I was like fighting him back, and I ran into the bathroom, and I had grabbed some pills, and I went into the bathroom, and I was about to take them, and he's banging and banging on the door, and just banging on the door. And he's like, don't take them, I love you, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. And I was determined to take these pills. And my daughter started crying, and I sat And I thought, and I didn't know at that time it was God saving me again. Um, and I was like, if I take these pills, what would be of her with him? And so I did it. But I didn't leave. I didn't leave that time. And we ended up moving from that place, still going through it, still fighting each other, like going through the same cycle. He was alcohol, he was drinking, he was alcoholic. I didn't know about generational curses at that time, right? So he was drinking, alcoholic, and the like I said, the only connection we had was fighting and sex. That's it. Like, other than that, it was it was miserable. The whole 10 years I was with him was just miserable. And I guess I was scared of like letting people know like I'm going through the same thing my mom's going through. Um my marriage failed. Um like I don't know what it was. I just couldn't leave. Like just like my mom, I couldn't leave until you do, right? But um we ended up moving to Livermore. We were working for a hotel, and at that place we were living at, um, we were fighting again. My daughter started getting anxiety attacks because she knew at this time she knew that her dad was hitting me. So it got to the point where she was like, "No, no, no! Don't touch my mom! Don't touch my mom! Don't touch my mom!" And anxiety entered her heart at that time. Um, we're still living together. We ended up moving to this house in Tracy, and that's when anxiety kicked in for me, because my daughter was having anxiety. Now I'm having anxiety that she's having anxiety. And it got to the point where I was like pulling out my hair. I was banging my head against the wall. I couldn't take it. Like I couldn't kill myself because I have a daughter to live for. So that's what I was doing. I was literally pulling out my hair. I was like hurting myself enough to feel numb and let go of that feeling, but still be alive for my daughter. Um, and he would just be like, "You're crazy! Like, what are you doing?" And he would like I said, he would hit me. He would entice me. Um, he would go to people and be like, "Oh, she's dirty. She don't take care of our daughter. Um, she's nasty." Like all these things, right? And I remember I was not having sex with him anymore. And he was like, "What's wrong with you? You're cheating on me," and all this stuff. And he would just talk down on me some more. And I'm like, "No, I I don't want to." He's like, "Oh, you don't love me anymore." So even he knew that I associated love with sex, right? Because now I wasn't giving it to him anymore. And I wanted another baby because the doctor was like, "Oh, you're young, but the older you get, the more your disease will kind of kill you and you're not going to be able to have more kids. And so you should have them now." So I decided that I was going to have another child. And I got pregnant with my son. Um, and I was about 8 months pregnant. And there was people over, my sister, my brother-in-law, and then two other couples that were our friends. They were over, they were all drinking and smoking and partying, and they seen that I was tired, and they were like, "You know what, we're gonna go because she's tired." And they left. And when they left, I was in my room, and he came at me and was like, "You made them leave, like you're so this and this and that." And I remember he grabbed my head because I was sitting against the wall. He grabbed my head and he just started banging it against the wall. He's like, "That's what you like to do. You like to bang your head against the wall." And he would just started banging it against the wall. And I got up and I ran to the living room and I sat on the couch, and I was like, "He's gonna stay over there," and he didn't. And he came at me, and I don't remember how, but I just was laying on the couch, he had his knee to my throat and he grabbed my face and he was like, "You're going to die today, B word," and just started choking me out. And I was not fighting back. And he's like, "Come on, fight back. You're so tough. You're so this. You're so tough. Nobody can with you," and all this stuff. "You always fight back and you're so tough. And come on, B word, this and this and that." And he's like, "You gonna die today." And I looked at him and all I could say was, "Your son." And it triggered something in him and he stopped. And I ran into the bathroom until he fell asleep. And in the morning, he woke up kissing on me and everything. And I was just scared at that point because that day I seen the devil in his eye. And I was like, "I'm good." And from that moment forward, we still lived together, but there was nothing between us. And nobody knew until one day he did something so small, which was when my son was born. It was just so small. He washed the dog stuff with my son's stuff, and um, I was like, "That's it." And I lost it, and I left, and I had left him before and moved and got back together and left him before, but this time my mom was like, "Well, what's different, you know?" And I was like, "I'm just done." She didn't know. She never knew. Nobody ever knew. This is really the first time I'm actually speaking to somebody about it, except my husband, my now husband, right? Um, so um, we split up. I ended up living with my mom, um, and I lived with her for a little bit, and then she kicked me out. She was like, you got to go live somewhere else. You can't live here." Um, and so I ended up getting a place. Um, I was working at Amazon at the time. I ended up getting a place by myself with my two kids. Um, and this is where I got saved. So I'm working 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. And it was a Saturday morning, Friday night, and I was driving home, and um, there was, the way that I can describe it is like there's a 2-lane freeway. One goes this way, like it curves, it curves, and then the other one goes straight. And there's a semi in front of me, a semi next to me, and there's this car, and I could tell that that car, like that person was drunk driving. And so it's coming really fast, and I'm like, all right, it's gonna slow down, like she's gonna slow down or whatever, and she doesn't. And I just remember I grabbed onto the steering wheel, and this is where I was introduced to like the supernatural because I like grabbed onto the steering wheel, I closed my eyes, and I was like, "God, if you're real, take me." And I opened my eyes, and there was nothing there besides me driving. It was all gone. All the cars were gone. It didn't happen. But at that time, I could literally feel the car crashing. I felt it all over my body, the pain. I physically felt the pain of the car just crashing in, like squeezing me. I felt it all. And so as I'm driving home and nothing happened, there's no cars, I'm thinking I'm crazy. Um, and I start what the heck is going on, right? And it brought, like, God brought me back to this moment where like there was certain things that I just knew that I knew. And like if you would ask me and I would tell you, now I know it's like prophetic, but at that time I didn't know what it was. And so I was like, okay, so I knew that I knew things, and now this is happening. And so I get home, and I'm completely silent. I sit on my bed and I'm just like this for the longest time, just sitting there. And I'm trying to process in my brain if I'm tired, crazy, or this really happened. And I know it really happened. because I could not shake it. I was literally like almost traumatized. For days, I would go to work and I didn't speak. And people were like, okay, something's going on. But that night that happened, I was trying to distract my mind. I remember going on Instagram and everything was of God. Like, God this, God that, God this, God this. And I was like, what the heck? Like, my algorithm isn't even like that. Like, my algorithm was ratchet, you know? And so I go to Facebook, same thing. I go on YouTube, same thing. And I'm like, God, okay, I hear you, I get it. So then I go back on Instagram and I had seen this post of one of my friends um, that apparently got saved. Um, and she messaged me. No, I messaged her and I was like, hey, I seen you're going to church. Like, what's up with that? Like, you know? And she started talking to me about her church and stuff. And then uh, I was making all these excuses. Like, if I pulled up the messages still on there, I was making all these excuses. Like, no, I ain't gonna wake up. I go to sleep at this time. I wake up at this time. I'm not gonna make it. She's like, well, if you can, make it. Make it. And like I said, it was a Saturday morning and it was church on Sunday. So I went to work that night and I came back home Sunday morning. It was 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock when I got home. And I said, God, if you really want me to go, you're going to wake me up. I'm going to take off all my alarms. I did this purposely, right? Because I was like, God didn't want me to go to church. What the heck? What would I be doing in church? It's crazy. That don't even sound right. So, he woke me up at 8 in the morning. I got up, I got dressed, and I went to church. And I liked it. It was cool. Like, it was just weird. People were speaking in tongues. I didn't know what the heck that was. I associate speaking in tongues with Harry Potter. So I didn't think it was a god, but I kept going. I didn't take my kids because I was scared. I'm going to be honest with you. I did not take my kids for a long time to church because, one, I didn't know what was going on. Two, these people were speaking in tongues and laying hands on each other and people were getting healed and it was just weird. Okay. To me at that time, it was just weird. And I was like, but I knew that God wanted me there, you know? So I was like, this must be the truth. Like, either that or it's a cult. So we're going to keep figuring it out by myself without my kids until I figure out what this is. And they had a guest speaker and it was Marcus Rogers. Some of you guys will probably know who he is. Marcus Rogers and I think Matt Cruz, they had came. And that day they were having the service and he looked at me in the middle of service and was like, God, sorry, not God. The enemy's been trying to take you out since the day you were born. You have gone through this, this, and this, and this, and that. Blah, 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 this, and this, and that. And like, I don't want to go too much into detail, but it's basically what I told you guys, right? So, I was just like, how does he know this? Like, what the heck? And I just feel fire come all over my hands. My hands start burning up. I start twitching in my chair because my hands are just on fire. And there's my friend sitting behind me and she's like, oh my God. She's all excited for me. She's like, you're getting saved. You feel the fire, all this stuff. And I'm looking at her like, girl, you crazy. But since that moment, I was never the same. That day, it was around October. I was supposed to go to, well, I did go. I ended up going to go eat with one of my friends at the time. It was her birthday. And I went with her and I remember like I'm in the car and they're all jamming, they're all playing music, they're like just worldly things, right? And I'm sitting in the back seat and they stop and they're like, what is wrong with you? Why are you so quiet? Like, what is going on? I was like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but I know it's real. And I'm gonna pursue this. Whatever it is, like I was just lit up. I was like traumatized a little bit, like processing it. I'm not gonna say traumatized. That's not the right word. But I was processing it, right? Like I've never seen I seen a deliverance when I was a little girl. I was about 11 years old when I seen a deliverance, but I didn't know what that was. I just knew that the girl started manifesting and all this stuff. So now I'm seeing this again, right? Like the same spiritual things, like the same. I'm seeing it again. So I'm like, wait, you've been preparing this moment since I was a little girl, because now I'm seeing it again, right? Um, I got saved. I started walking with the Lord heavy. I had a deliverance. That was crazy in itself. I didn't know that I had that many things in me. I could tell you right now, the spirit of anger was the worst thing that came out. Um, and the spirit of Jezebel. Um, and so I'm walking with God, and I start losing everything. I lost my home. I had to, one of the ladies from church took me in because I didn't have nowhere to live, because the guy that was renting me out the apartment, he was just like, well, I want to give this apartment to somebody I'm related to. So I lost my home. I didn't have nowhere to go. After that, I lost my job, and I was like, what is going on? Like literally everything that Job went through, I was started going through. And everybody's like, oh, you're probably in sin, that's why you're losing everything, you're probably out here just doing it with so and so and fulano, and that's why. And I wasn't. I was literally walking with God, to the point where my mom would be like, where are you going, why are you going, like, who are you going out with? Like, what is going on? Because I would visit my mom, and I'd be like, I'm going to church. She did not believe me. She did not believe. She was like, no, you're not going to church. You better tell me where you're going. You're being weird. You're acting weird. Who are you with? Are you on drugs? You're not going to church. I was like, Mom, I'm literally just going to church. And she's like, no, you're not. Stop lying to me. Like, it was a whole thing. I got baptized and everything. But as things started happening to me that I didn't understand, because I was a newborn Christian, I didn't even know my Bible. I didn't have nobody to disciple me. Like, I didn't know, right? And when you don't know, you have this image that or perception that once you turn to God, everything's supposed to be butterflies and rainbows. And let me tell you, that's not the case. There is a spiritual warfare going on, and I was going through it. And if I had somebody who would have discipled me, it would have been different. But I ended up walking away from the Lord, long story short, slowly. And in this time that I walked away, this is probably the most embarrassing part of my testimony. I ended up with a married man. And I was in full adultery, full blown adultery. It started off as a friendship, and then only got worse from there. Like, you know, um, I ended up with this man. We were together for 2 years. One full adultery mode, and then the second year, we ended up being together. We lived together. I was basically had custody of his kids at the time. But when I met him, um, he was like the, how do I say it? The fake promise. You know when you're praying for something, and then the enemy knows what you're praying for too, so he's gonna give you this counterfeit, right? He was the counterfeit. He would butter me up. He took me everywhere. He like said, you're beautiful here and there, you're this and you're that, and just spoke all life into me. And until we moved in together, the abuse started happening again. And it was bad. The same thing. Like, I was fighting back. Like, he, at first it was just like a nut, like trying to scare me, like, oh, you're just a woman. And I'd be like, if you nuck, I'm a buck. And it got to that point where he knucked and I bucked. And things started swinging, you know, swinging this and swinging that. And thank God I missed, because I would not be out here free in this world, just like, you know, in my past marriage. I would, if I would have, and let me tell you, I've never missed besides these 2 times. So I know that was God, right? Because if I would have hit this person with the things that I was throwing, I would not be free. I would be locked up. Okay? The things that I've done in retaliation is not okay, but I would not be free. I'm gonna just leave it at that, because I don't know the statute of limitation of things, okay? So I'm gonna just leave it at that. I would not be free. Um and it got to the point where, like I said, it was really bad. I remember he was really drunk one day, and I hid the keys because he was trying to drive. I hid the keys, and he came and just, I was laying on the bed sleeping, and just flipped the whole bed while I was on it. One time, even his son had to, um, like, literally attack him because he was attacking me. So his son even, like, defended me. Like, it was just crazy. And I could not believe that I was going through the same thing again, you know? So it got to the point where I hit rock bottom again. I left him. That's when I got a new job. Um, and I met my husband, like, shortly after. And if I would have waited, God would have saved me from so much. And I would have been just so ready when I met my husband. But praise the Lord that he knew God. And when he seen me, God told him I was his wife. And he was like, but I need you to be gentle with her, because she's been through a lot, right? And I was not walking with, actually, I had came back to the Lord. I had came back to the Lord, and I was walking with God, and he was just breaking so many things off of me. And this is why I say my husband is one of my biggest blessings, because he heard from God, and he had the patience. Because when I met that man, and he would be like, you're so beautiful, I would literally be like, shut the F up. Shut the F up. Don't be talking to me like that. Don't be telling me these things. Like, and he would look at me and be like, oh my God. And I didn't know, like, you know, God was just like, just be patient. Just be patient with her. Just be patient with her. I didn't believe that I could have a man like that. I didn't believe that I could have, you know, just a gentle, quiet, like, don't get me wrong. He is a strong man. Like, everything that I prayed for, it was in him. And I knew that he was my husband by the second date, because in 2017, when I got saved and I was praying for my husband, I had written down confirmations, and there was only one. And I wanted to go to the Cheesecake Factory. I love cheesecake. I had never been to Cheesecake Factory, and that's the only reason why I wanted to go, because I wanted like, I wanted to taste their cheesecakes, right? And at the time when I was dating the other person, we would go, like I said, we would go everywhere except to the Cheesecake Factory. And we had made plans to go to Cheesecake Factory, but we always ended up somewhere else, and that was God. Okay. He said, God is so specific. And if you ask God for something, he will give it to you. So me asking God, this is a confirmation. I want that this is my husband. I got it on our second date with my husband. And I was just in awe, you know. And when he took me to the Cheesecake Factory, I was looking at him crazy. And he was like, what's wrong? And, you know, I couldn't tell him that he was my husband. But anyways, so we met. He pursued me. He was patient with me. would check me. He'd be like, you need to heal this. You need to heal that. You need to heal this. And that's what I prayed for. I prayed for a man strong enough to tell me no. I prayed for a man strong enough to tell me when I was wrong, because everybody else would just say and let me basically tell them what to do and everything, because they wanted sex from me, right? This man, I kid you not. So they was just, God was speaking to him, because, we eventually fell into sexual sin. But I would try to use that for when he was mad at me, or to try to make up with him, or to try to show him that I loved him. And this man looked at me one day and he was like, do you know you're more than that? Do you know that's not love? Like, that's, yeah, like it comes with it, but that's not love. Like, it's a plus to love. And it took that man to tell me that, to know that that's not the way you express yourself in love, right? So even though he was not walking with God, we both knew that we were meant to be together, right? We had confirmation about it. He knew of God, but he was not walking with God. I was walking with God, but slipped away, because when we fell into sexual sin, I had shame. So I slipped away again because I had shame. And eventually we're like, you know what? God's calling us. We have to get married. We have to make it right. And we did. We got married. We made it right. And we ended up going to church, and God encountered us together at church. Together. And since then, we've been walking with the Lord again. And things have just been incredible. He got saved. I got saved. My mom got saved. Just the kids, they're on fire. Our kids are on fire for the Lord. But yeah, I say all these things. Right now it's a comma, right? Like, he's still working on this. This has been since May. We're in September, so he's still working on us. We're both like getting our fire with the Lord. Like, we love to be in his word. We're in our learning season right now. He's never read the Bible. Even though he knew of God, he's never read the Bible. I grew up Catholic. I never knew of God until I got saved, radically, dramatically, just like I am, because God knew that he had to do something like that in order for me to be saved. And I just want to encourage those who have been through the things that I have been through, who don't see a way out, who have been suicidal, who use their body to get what they want. Just, they don't know love. They didn't have a father. They've been abused. They've been through all these things. Like, give your life to the Lord, and I guarantee you that things will change. Invite the Holy Spirit into your heart, into your life. If you have walked away and you are full of shame, it's time to come back. It's time to come back. The time is now. He will forgive you. He will it says that he doesn't remember. Once you come to him and you are forgiven, there is no remembrance of your sin. There is just a surrenderance that has to happen. Give your life to Christ. There's nothing more out there for you. You've been through it all. You've done the drinking, you've done the drugs, you've done the smoking, you've done the witchcraft, you've done it all. And if you're watching this video and you're here to the end, it's because he's calling you. And if you're doing it to be nosy, guess what? The Holy Spirit gonna do the work in you anyways. Your spirit is gonna take something of whatever I said. There is no mother, father, grandfather, man, sister, brother, it don't matter who it is. They cannot fill your void. Trust me, I know. It can't be filled. The only one who can fill it is Jesus Christ. I've had everything. When I got married to my husband, he's a hardworking man. He put this house over us. We own a house. He bought me a brand new car. Like, our house is full of furniture. Anything I can think of, he will get it for me. I don't even have to ask him. If I say, "Oh, look, this is cute," he'll go buy it for me. And I was still in depression. Something was still wrong. We were not walking with the Lord. So something was missing. He couldn't feel it. We were married. We had everything. And he could not feel the void. There's nothing that can fill your void except the Lord. So if you've walked away or you don't know God, now is the time to repent and ask God, "God, I know that I don't know you, but I want to know you. Fill me right now, Lord God. God, I know that I walked away and I feel shame. Take away the shame. I repent." Give your life to Christ. If you got anything from this video, it's give your life to Christ and watch him turn beauty from ashes.